Corporate parties were always a kind of purgatory, too polished, too forced. I didn't even want to go. But Lauren said it was important. Leadership visibility, she called it. Everyone who's anyone will be there. She even picked my tie out that morning. Told me to look sharp, but approachable. That's what made it sting more. The effort she put into making me look presentable, while she was the one stepping out of our marriage dressed like a secret. The event was at the Atherton Grand, right in the heart of Chicago, one of those old money buildings turned into a modern-day playground for executives. Valet out front, sparkling wine on trays, music just loud enough to pretend you couldn't hear people gossiping next to you. I'd been to enough of these things to know the formula, but I hadn't expected the formula to include betrayal. Lauren looked stunning. Too stunning. She wore a navy silk dress that clung in a way I wasn't used to seeing on her at work functions. Subtle, but seductive. Her heels clicked with intention, and her hair was swept up like she had a red carpet to walk. Not that she walked toward me. She barely acknowledged I was there. Aside from a quick smile that didn't touch her eyes and a distracted, "Hey babe, glad you made it." She didn't even wait for me to respond before turning to a cluster of coworkers and melting into conversation. I stood there for a second, unsure whether to follow or disappear. Eventually, I made my way to the bar. "Whiskey neat," I told the bartender. I needed something that didn't come with a fruit garnish or fake charm. Across the room, Lauren was laughing. Head tilted back, fingers grazing someone's arm. I squinted. Michael Harper, her boss. Technically, the head of strategic operations, but more importantly, charming, twice divorced, and the kind of guy who called everyone champ. I'd heard his name enough over dinner, project deadlines, late-night calls, the upcoming retreat he personally invited her to. It all clicked now. I watched as he handed her a drink. Syrah. She took it without hesitation. She hates Syrah. I remember the first time she tried it. We were at this vineyard up near Traverse City, celebrating our 4th anniversary. She made a face like she'd bitten into a lemon. "Tastes like regret," she joked. "Too heavy. Sticks to your tongue like bad news." But there she was, sipping it like it was her favorite. Not even a wince. Maybe that's what betrayal looks like. Sipping what you used to hate, standing too close to someone you're supposed to only respect, and laughing just a little too hard at their mediocre jokes. I tried not to jump to conclusions. Tried to be the reasonable partner. But my gut had already done the math. Then it happened. She bent down to adjust her strap or pick up a napkin, I don't remember, and her clutch tilted just enough for something to slip out. A hotel keycard. I reached down and picked it up before she could. It was navy blue with the gold-embossed seal of the Atherton. Room number printed right on the front. Room 724. My breath caught in my throat. That was not the floor reserved for the corporate briefing she told me about last week. The one where she claimed the team got stuck overnight due to bad scheduling. I'd asked her why she hadn't just come home, and she said, "We were triple booked and exhausted. Everyone just crashed in one of the shared suites." I hadn't pressed. I trusted her. That same hotel. That same date. But this time the room wasn't shared. It was a king. I handed the card back to her, pretending not to notice. "You dropped this." She looked down, and for just a flicker of a second, barely enough to register, her smile twitched. Her hand moved a little too fast. She slid the card back into her clutch with a quiet, "Thanks, babe." Then, just like that, she turned away and resumed talking to Harper. I stood there for another 10 minutes, watching. Not just her. Everyone. I noticed how a few people glanced at me, then at Lauren and Harper. Quiet, knowing glances. The kind you exchange when you see something you're not supposed to comment on. That's when I saw it. Harper placing his hand gently on the small of her back as the photographer approached. She didn't move, didn't step away, just leaned in slightly. Flash. Capture the moment. I looked around again. 2 colleagues, Darren and Shauna, I think, exchanged a look. Shauna whispered something, and Darren didn't even try to hide his smirk. My ears started ringing. I felt like I was watching it all underwater. Lauren finally walked over to me 20 minutes later. "God, I'm exhausted," she said, rolling her shoulders. "It's been nonstop today. I wanted to ask her if that included the Syrah, the hotel, the hand on her back, but I didn't. Instead, I just nodded and handed my coat to the attendant. She barely noticed. She was already turning back to the bar. Stepping out for a bit, I muttered. She waved absently. Don't be long. But I was long. I walked out of the hotel and didn't look back. I didn't call a cab. I didn't text her. I walked. Just let the city blur past me in streaks of yellow light and cold wind. My brain was trying to bargain with itself. Maybe there was a reasonable explanation. Maybe that room card was old. Maybe the wine was a coincidence. But the mark on her neck, just below her necklace, slightly red, like someone's mouth had been there too long. That wasn't a coincidence. Neither was the perfume. Not hers. Too strong. Masculine. The funny thing is, I didn't feel rage. Not then. Not yet. Just a deep, slow cold spreading through my chest. When I got back home that night, I didn't even wait up. I just sat in the dark living room and let the silence answer the questions I hadn't asked her. The next morning, I didn't bring it up. Neither did she. But that was the beginning of the end. I started pulling away slowly, methodically, like a plane taxiing off the runway and disappearing into the fog. She didn't notice right away. She was still in that phase where she thought she had time, that she could keep the lie going with just enough details to keep me tethered. She thought I'd be too afraid to leave, too dependent, too forgiving. But something snapped that night, and she didn't see it. She hasn't seen it. Not even now. She still calls sometimes. Still sends me links to restaurants I used to like. Still tells mutual friends she hopes I'm finding peace. But she's not talking to me. She's talking to a version of me that doesn't exist anymore. Because the truth is, the night she pretended I didn't exist was the same night I started becoming someone new. Someone who saw everything clearly. Not just what she did, but what I'd ignored for months. And ever since that night, she's been searching for me in every man she meets. But she'll never find me again. The thing about red flags is you usually only recognize them in the rearview mirror when it's too late and you're already too deep in the wreckage to turn around. The signs were there. I see them clearly now, flashing like sirens. But back then, I called them stress, fatigue, corporate burnout. I gave her the benefit of the doubt because I thought that's what love was supposed to do. Looking back, it's almost comical. The sheer number of things I brushed aside under the umbrella of, she's just tired. Like those sudden off-site meetings on weekends that always came with vague details and last-minute packing. It's a new contractor, she told me once. We're onboarding them in Milwaukee. But when I offered to drive her, she gave me this weird look, like I just insulted her. It's fine, babe, she said too quickly. Michael's already handling transportation. That should have been the first clue. And then there were the taxi receipts. I only saw them because she accidentally paid with her personal card one night and the email notification pinged on our shared inbox. A $47 charge from a rideshare that ended at the Lakeside Renaissance Hotel on a Saturday. She told me she was working from home that weekend. I convinced myself it was probably just a client drop-off. I wanted to believe that. The phone behavior changed too. That was subtle at first. No more notification previews on the lock screen. Then came the password change. I asked her why. She laughed again too quickly and said it was required by IT. But the real giveaway, she started flipping the phone over whenever she set it down. Always screen down like it was a reflex. And she never left it charging in the kitchen at night anymore. It was always tucked under her pillow, like a secret. New perfumes started showing up on her vanity. Expensive brands in sleek, foreign-looking bottles, all with no packaging, no receipts, no mention. She claimed they were gifts from Vendor Appreciation Week, whatever that meant. But they didn't smell like her. They smelled strategic, like someone else picked them out. One evening, I found gym clothes in the trunk of her car while loading in groceries. That wouldn't have been strange, except she canceled her gym membership 2 months earlier. I asked her about it. She shrugged. I'm thinking of rejoining, she said. But closer to work. Still, the leggings looked too new, the shoes too clean. And I never saw her actually go. Just excuses. Too tired tonight. Early meeting tomorrow. Always something. There was also the contractor, Jason, or at least that's what she called him. He had a corporate email address, but every time she talked about him, she sounded rehearsed. He's just helping with infrastructure scaling, she said once. But I'm in IT. I know infrastructure, and I'd never heard of a single deliverable from this so-called Jason. What I did see were emails with his domain, Harper's domain, showing up after midnight. Short subject lines. No attachments. Once, I picked up her phone by accident when both of ours buzzed at the same time. The screen lit up with a notification from H. Just that, a single initial. When she realized I had her phone, her whole face changed. "That's work," she snapped, snatching it back. "Can you not?" I told myself I was overreacting. The necklace was another one. A dainty silver piece she used to wear daily. I'd given it to her for our anniversary. She said it was her good luck charm. Then one week it vanished. When I asked about it, she said she must have left it at the office. I didn't think twice, until I saw it again, a few days later, in a coworker's Instagram story. Same necklace, unmistakable. Same lakeside resort from the taxi receipt. Caption: Best weekend with the Dream Team Blue Heart #retreat vibes. Lauren wasn't even tagged, but she was there. I knew that view. I'd been there with her 2 years ago. She never mentioned the trip. Then there were the restaurant charges. Once or twice, she used the company card, so it didn't hit our personal account, but I saw the location on her calendar. Working remotely. But she wasn't remote. She was dining at high-end restaurants in Milwaukee. I checked the timestamps. They didn't line up with any meetings. They were always late. Candlelight hours. One night, I picked up a call from an unknown number. The voice on the other end hung up as soon as I answered. 30 seconds later, I heard her voice upstairs, swearing quietly. She rushed downstairs, already holding her phone. "Did someone just call my phone?" she asked, too casually. "No," I said, because technically they hadn't. They'd called mine. That night, she deleted her entire call log. Every last number. Even her recent ones. "Cleaning up storage," she claimed, as if calls took up gigabytes of space. Still, I let it go. Told myself maybe she was just stressed, overwhelmed, overworked. Maybe I was the one being paranoid. But it all kept stacking. Little inconsistencies, like layers of dust on a surface you can't bring yourself to wipe clean. Another time, she came home late, way too late, and when she walked in, she reeked of Harper's cologne. I didn't notice at first, but when I hugged her, it hit me. Musky, expensive, distinctive. The same scent I noticed earlier that month when he gave me a too-firm handshake at a company dinner. I asked her if she'd seen him that evening. She said no. "We haven't worked together all week," she said, but her voice cracked. Just slightly. That's the thing. Once you notice one lie, all the others start glowing like neon signs. She started dressing differently too. Not just nicer, bolder. Heels instead of flats. Form-fitting instead of casual. First, I complimented her. Told her she looked beautiful. She smiled, but it wasn't the smile I knew. It was triumphant, like she wasn't dressing for me at all. And still, I made excuses. Still, I called it growing pains. Still, I held on to hope. Even when I caught her typing on her laptop in the middle of the night, Windows minimized the second I walked by. "Just finishing some last-minute stuff," she said. But she looked guilty, like I'd caught her watching something she wasn't supposed to. Only later did I learn that Harper used a secure messaging platform not tied to company systems. Encrypted chats. No trails. Nothing to screensh *T. Convenient. The final straw before the party, the one I should have treated like a smoking *N, was when I found an expense report open on her work laptop. She left it on the kitchen counter by mistake. I wasn't snooping, not intentionally. But the line items? Room service. Spa charges. A minibar charge from a date she told me she was stuck in traffic on I-94. That's when the suspicion stopped being a whisper and started screaming. And yet, I still didn't say anything. Because what do you do when the person you love is slowly becoming a stranger? One keystroke, one receipt, one lie at a time. You pretend. You hope. You hold your breath and pray you're wrong. Until one night you see the keycard. And suddenly, every red flag you ignored starts waving in unison. Denial can only hold out for so long before reality kicks the door down. For weeks after the party, I walked around like a ghost, eating, sleeping, working, but never really there. Lauren acted normal, maybe too normal. She started leaving cheerful post-it notes on the fridge again. Dinners in the oven, red heart. You're amazing. The kind of little gestures that once meant something. But now they felt like damage control. Guilt wrapped in stationery. It was the silence between us that did me in. The quiet pauses where her eyes didn't quite meet mine. The awkward half-smiles that couldn't hide the distance. I knew what was happening, but I needed proof. Something I couldn't rationalize away later when the loneliness hit. The answer came through my work. I handle IT maintenance for a small compliance firm. Not glamorous, but it gives me access to networks, archives, data recovery. I've spent years fixing other people's digital mistakes. I never thought I'd use those *LLS on my own wife. Started small. I restored an old backup from her work phone. One that synced automatically to our home Wi-Fi months earlier. The process took hours. When the files loaded, I expected boring things. Calendar invites, expense sheets, maybe a few client messages. Instead, I found a folder labeled conference_audio. Inside were several voice memos. The first few were harmless meeting recaps, project notes. Then came one file that changed everything. A 10-minute clip. Time-stamped the exact weekend she said she was at the lake retreat. I hit play, and her voice filled the room. I just feel nothing at home anymore, she said softly, her tone heavy with exhaustion. Then another voice, Harper's, answered. You don't have to pretend anymore. You're here now. You've earned something better. There was a pause. Then a sound that made my skin crawl. A kiss. Faint, but unmistakable. I froze. Every nerve in my body went cold. I replayed it 3 times, just to make sure I wasn't hearing things. But no, there it was. Clear. Real. Undeniable. The truth spoken in her own voice. I didn't rage. I didn't cry. I just sat there in the glow of my monitor, staring at the waveform of her betrayal. I'd been looking for evidence, but I didn't realize how final it would feel to find it. Once the floodgate opened, the rest followed. Her phone backups led me to synced cloud data, screensh *TS, attachments, and internal messaging logs between her and Harper. Most were scrubbed clean, but not all. A few remained cached in the server's metadata, enough to paint a picture. I saw calendar invites coded as team syncs that lined up with hotel check-ins. GPS pings from her phone matched corporate travel expenses billed to client entertainment. Dozens of tiny digital fingerprints that didn't lie. The more I dug, the more the puzzle assembled itself. Access logs from Harper's laptop showed multiple sign-ins from Lauren's account after hours. Not remote access. Physical. Meaning she was there in his office after dark. Then came the photographs. Not ones she took, ones she was in. The company's security cameras didn't store footage beyond 30 days, but the backup server held low-resolution stills for audit purposes. I used her employee credentials, still active, to pull them. Most were blank corridors, timestamps, mundane frames. But one set stopped me cold. Office 9B. Frosted glass door. Blinds drawn. 2 figures. The time code matched a hotel charge on her company card. The same hour, the same day. There she was, sitting on the edge of a desk, head tilted toward him. Harper, leaning in close, his hand on her knee, her face half lit by the monitor's glow. That was the moment I stopped wondering. Suspicion turned into certainty. The theory became a timeline. When you work with data, you start thinking in patterns, input, output, cause, effect. So I did what came naturally. I cataloged everything. Every text snippet, every timestamp, every overlapping data point. I didn't know yet what I'd do with it, but I knew one thing. Truth needed structure. Chaos wasn't enough. I compiled a chronology, months of messages, travel logs, and emails. I color-coded each data stream. Blue for Lauren, Red for Harper, gray for corporate records. It was clinical, detached. The kind of thing investigators do when emotion gets in the way. Maybe that's why it helped. I could breathe while treating it like a case file, not a life. There was one email thread that still haunts me. Subject line, Agenda Adjustment. It looked harmless until I opened it. Inside, Lauren wrote, "Don't worry. He suspects nothing. I'll handle it." Harper replied, "You always do. Can't wait for the next one." Attached was a PDF itinerary for a supposed vendor alignment meeting. The location, the same hotel from the card she dropped. That was it. The final nail. I stared at the screen until my eyes burned. Then I saved everything to an encrypted drive, labeled it audit_sequence, and ejected it like a loaded *P***N, because that's what it was now, evidence. Cold, technical, irrefutable proof that I hadn't imagined any of it. For days after that, I barely spoke to her. I still slept beside her, if you can call it sleeping. She'd roll over, place a hand on my chest, and whisper, "You okay?" I'd answer, "Just tired." She believed it, or maybe she wanted to, but behind that silence, I was building something. Not revenge, not yet. Just truth. Truth so solid it couldn't be twisted or denied. I started cross-referencing her data with corporate expense reports. Using open access APIs, I matched hotel booking codes with transaction timestamps. The results lined up perfectly. Each conference she attended coincided with Harper's itinerary. Each late night at the office matched his access log entries. Even the car mileage report synced right down to the mile. By the end of the week, I had what most people would call obsession. But I called it clarity, because for the first time in months, I wasn't lost in suspicion. I had facts. I had numbers. I had voices on tape and images on file. Proof doesn't lie. I remember one night sitting at my desk, staring at all the evidence neatly arranged in folders, and feeling something unexpected. Not relief, not satisfaction, but grief. Cold, clean grief. Like mourning a person who's still alive. That's when it hit me. The Lauren I loved didn't exist anymore. Maybe she never did. Maybe she was just a version of herself that existed through my belief in her. And the moment I stopped believing, that version vanished. Still, I couldn't decide what to do next. Part of me wanted to confront her, slam the evidence down on the table, and watch her face crumble under the truth. Another part of me wanted to stay quiet and let the consequences come naturally. A quiet exposure, no shouting, no scenes. Just the inevitable unraveling of her carefully constructed lie. I didn't sleep much that night, but as I sat in the dark, the sound of the city muffled through the windows, one thought crystallized in my mind. The truth was no longer just mine to carry. It needed to be seen, heard, proven. And that's when I decided what came next wouldn't be a confrontation. It would be documentation. The kind of proof no one could ever erase again. People think justice always looks like a courtroom, gavels, closing arguments, verdicts. But in the corporate world, justice wears a different face. It's quieter, procedural, and incredibly paper-dependent. It doesn't shout. It doesn't swing fists. It builds a case one document at a time, and that's exactly what I set out to do. After I compiled the digital proof, I began building what I called the archive. Not just evidence, but narrative. A timeline, not just of infidelity, but of fraud. That's what made it bigger than us. What started as a personal betrayal was now tangled in corporate misconduct, ethics violations, and policy breaches. And Lauren? She wasn't just a wife who cheated. She was a systems administrator with privileged access who had willfully assisted in manipulating compliance reports. That's when things became more than personal. They became actionable. I created a master spreadsheet. Each tab told a different part of the story. Tab 1, Travel Reimbursements. Side-by-side entries of Lauren and Harper's expense reports, sorted by date, with matching hotel stays and duplicate mileage claims. Tab 2, Keycard Logs. Data extracted from the building's back-end system showing after-hours entries into Harper's office, matched to Lauren's login credentials. Tab 3, Calendar Data. Screensh *TS from internal scheduling tools showing recurring vendor meetings during off-peak hours, most of which coincided with personal events Lauren had lied about. Weekends she said she was with friends or homesick. Tab 4. Personal messages. Archived snippets from the recovered backup, anonymized but timestamped, where both parties discussed manipulating report language and booking under code names. Harper once called it their little loophole. I made sure everything was cross-validated. No speculation, no emotion, just structure and audit trails. Next came the emails. Using a forensic plugin our company uses to identify insider threats, I indexed a folder of flagged content. The plugin uses keyword tagging, words like discretion, after hours, untraceable, split invoice. The algorithm returned 26 hits. I read each one twice. A few were vague. A few were damning. One stood out more than the rest. Invoice adjusted. Added client research to shift cost. We'll square it up later. Key in through side entrance. I'll make sure the camera logs don't flag access. This one's on me. Rooms already paid. From Harper to Lauren. I read that line over and over. This one's on me. He wasn't just covering for her. He was financing it. Just not with his own money. That's when I looped in the company policy manual. Section 8. For misuse of funds. Section 12. 3. Personal conduct and reputation risk. Section 5. 2. 1. Conflict of interest regarding manager-subordinate relationships. All violated. Plain and simple. I converted the report into a PDF, branded it with the firm's standard audit layout, and included a summary page. Compiled evidence of personal misconduct, misuse of company resources, and possible manipulation of internal systems for the purpose of concealing an unreported relationship between a senior executive and a systems administrator. Submitted confidentially per Section 13. 1 of the Employee Ethics Channel. I made 3 encrypted copies. One went to internal audit, another to compliance, and the third to legal. I didn't attach my name, not directly. I used a unique submission token that our own team built to protect whistleblowers. I tested it myself on dummy data years ago. I knew exactly how it would be routed. It was done. Submitted. Logged. Irreversible. Then I waited. At home, Lauren remained oblivious. She was chipper that week. Made blueberry muffins, just because. Even ironed one of my shirts for the first time in months. I think she felt the temperature changing and mistook it for thawing. She had no idea the walls were already closing in. The following Monday, Harper missed the morning call. That alone wouldn't have meant anything. But then came the 11 a.m. All staff alert. Michael Harper is currently on administrative leave pending a routine compliance review. Please direct all reporting matters to Interim Director Cynthia Dow. Routine? Not a chance. I kept quiet. Didn't gloat. Didn't tip my hand. I just watched it all begin to shift. By Thursday, internal audit had *N requesting access to travel records, internal chat logs, and security footage from the last 6 months. It was happening slowly, methodically, just the way these things are designed to. I knew Lauren would be next. Not accused, not yet, but named. That Friday she got the email. I watched her open it at the kitchen counter. She went pale as she read the subject line. Request for interview, compliance inquiry, privileged access users. She stared at the screen for a full minute before setting the laptop down. They're doing a review, she said, voice tight. Something about Harper's travel reimbursements. Looks like they're pulling logs from the whole team. I acted surprised. That *CKs. Think it's serious? She bit her lip. I don't know. They're casting a wide net, I guess. Casting. No, Lauren. It was a precision strike. I kept watching her over the weekend. She was quieter, restless, checked her email constantly. She didn't bring up the muffins again. She didn't iron anything. Monday came and she went in early. By noon, word had already spread that IT had locked Harper's credentials and started auditing devices he'd issued, including one laptop that Lauren used during remote site visits. She texted me from work. Hey, today's nuts. Everyone's on edge. They brought in outside counsel. I'm not worried, just tired. Call you later? I replied, hope it goes okay. No heart emoji. No kiss. Just neutrality. That evening, she came home late. Said she had a debrief. Her hair was pulled back messily, and she looked like someone who hadn't eaten all day. She poured a glass of water and stared into it like it held answers. I hate this stuff, she said. Compliance. I asked. No, the not knowing. I mean, yeah, Harper was sketchy sometimes, but no one ever said anything. I nodded. People usually don't. She gave me a strange look. Would you? Would I what? Say something. If you knew something like that was happening. I shrugged. I think the truth always finds its way through. Eventually. She nodded, slowly, then turned away. She didn't know it yet, but the fuse had already been lit. The following day, another announcement came out, formal now. A preliminary investigation has uncovered discrepancies in expense justifications and access protocols involving senior leadership. An external forensic audit has been commissioned. At that point, it was no longer about personal drama. It was about liability, risk mitigation, reputation control. Lauren was summoned again. This time, it wasn't a polite request. It was a notice of obligation under company policy. I stayed out of her way. Let her pace, let her spiral. She never suspected me. Not because I was perfect, but because she believed I was passive. That I'd never take action. That I'd just fade out of relevance like some dusty background detail in the life she was building with someone else. But I'd been there all along. Watching. Logging. Preserving the facts she worked so hard to bury. When she finally broke down, it was a Wednesday night. I don't know what's going on, she said, her voice cracking. They asked about emails I don't remember. About meetings I didn't schedule. It's like they already know everything. I didn't respond. Because they did. Because I told them. Because I stopped being her alibi and became the audit she never saw coming. There's something eerie about watching a storm hit from the inside. Knowing you're the reason it started, and still keeping your hands in your pockets while the walls shake. That week, everything accelerated. Lauren became a name in reports, not just a person in our house. Her access was flagged for privileged permissions. Her calendar audit expanded, and her laptop, the one she used for client notes, was placed under forensic review. But I wasn't done, because there was still a story to tell. One that didn't just end in disciplinary action or policy violations. This wasn't just two people having an affair. It was systemic. It was funded. It used company dollars and client dinners as camouflage. It was deception. Financed through travel stipends, shielded by rank and protected by silence. And I knew exactly who to tell. Her name was Kelly Davis, investigative journalist, known for reporting on corporate ethics failures and executive misconduct. I'd read her articles before, well-researched, emotionally restrained, but devastating in impact. She didn't care about bedroom drama. She cared about abuse of power, about financial structures being used to cover up private corruption. So I sent her everything, through a secure drop. No names at first, just documents, the audio clip, the expense reports, the email strings, a write-up of the timeline, the keycard data, all sanitized for anonymity, but precise. 3 days later, I got a response. Whoever you are, this is real. I'm vetting it now. If you're serious about the implications, I'm going to need context. So I gave it to her. Not all of it. Not the marriage. Not the heartbreak. Just the facts. The structure. I told her what they were hiding. How Harper used leadership retreats to mask personal hotel expenses. How Lauren falsified internal meetings to process reimbursements. How the logs showed access manipulation that circumvented standard review. Kelly was methodical, careful, and relentless. Over 2 weeks, she pieced together the bigger picture. Cross-referencing public filings, third-party vendor contracts, even local hotel staff who remembered, the guy with the beard and the brunette who always checked in separately but left together. And then the article dropped. Headline: Executive Discretion. How Internal Gaps in Oversight Enabled a Culture of Silence at Vardex Solutions. It hit like a slow detonation. Not loud, not immediate, but powerful. It started in online industry circles, then legal blogs, then shareholders. The article didn't name Lauren directly, but Harper was front and center. Phrases like unreported personal relationships, pattern of inappropriate reimbursement requests, use of junior staff to falsify logs floated just below the surface of outright accusation. And Lauren? She was there too. Not by name, but by detail. The systems administrator with access to travel logs. The contracted party linked to multiple audit inconsistencies. The coordinator listed on 3 overlapping travel events labeled as client-facing, which internal documents later disproved. She read it at the kitchen table. Her face drained as she scrolled, fingers shaking, eyes darting over every paragraph. I watched from the living room, said nothing. Then came the fallout. The board issued a statement within 24 hours. Vardex Solutions takes allegations of financial misconduct and ethical breaches extremely seriously. We have launched a third-party review and placed involved leadership under suspension pending investigation. Meetings were canceled. Travel approvals frozen. Clients began emailing, seeking clarity. Lauren received a message from legal, asking her to come in to provide background and context regarding entries under her system credentials. She didn't sleep that night. Neither did I. She sat on the edge of the bed, staring at her phone. They think I did this alone, she said. Like I masterminded it. I didn't reply. I was already past that part, the denial, the blame shift, the gaslighting. I wasn't here to soothe her guilt. The next morning, Harper disappeared from the org chart. His title removed. Email address deactivated. No longer with the company was the official line. But internally, the HR systems told a fuller story. Resigned during active investigation. No severance issued. Lauren was called into a formal deposition. She didn't tell me. I found out because I checked the internal meeting calendar for compliance. She was listed under interview, level 2 review. Duration, for hours. When she came home, she looked smaller. Like the architecture of who she was had cracked inward. She stood in the doorway, keys in hand, jacket half off. I don't know how it got this far, she said. I didn't say you made it this far. She poured herself a drink, something she never used to do on a weekday, and sat at the kitchen counter, staring into the glass like it might spell out an exit plan. They want me to sign something, she mumbled. I nodded. Of course they did. Containment. Legalese. The corporate version of sweeping the ashes into a box and shoving it under the rug. They say it's a consensual relationship disclosure. Retroactive, she continued. If I sign it, they'll mark it as a policy violation but drop the audit trail. No termination, just a formal reprimand. I let the silence hang. I don't know what to do, she whispered. Still, I didn't answer. Because what do you say to someone who built a fire and now wants help putting it out? The next day, the article reached national media. Syndicated, shared, debated. Not because of the affair, but because of the pattern. Kelly had done her homework. She dug deeper and found other instances, other departments, other unexplained client dinners with personal photos tucked behind them. She had turned our private collapse into a case study on corporate failure. And the partners? They panicked. 2 major vendors paused contracts. Potential merger froze. One investor called for an emergency session of the board, citing irreparable brand damage. Lauren's name wasn't public, but internally she was radioactive. By the end of the week, she was pulled from all active projects. Her access changed. Her badge flagged for review. She told me they were restructuring, that her role was being reevaluated. I nodded, but she knew. We both did. I had already packed half my things by then. Slowly, quietly, one drawer at a time. Not as punishment, just as preservation. 'Cause I didn't need to scream anymore. The world was doing it for me. Lauren started spending more time in the guest room. She stopped asking where I was going, what I was doing, why I was quiet. Because now, she was the one surrounded by whispers, by glances, by the same suspicious energy she used to redirect toward me. At night, I'd hear her crying. Sometimes quietly, sometimes not. But I didn't go to her. Not because I was cruel, but because the truth had already spoken, louder than I ever could. I never confronted her. I left a signed separation agreement, keys, and proof I'd closed every shared account. No fights, no farewell. I moved out quietly. At work, she became a liability, projects reassigned, colleagues distant. The company labeled her a conflict of interest. No explanation needed. My silence did what shouting never could. It let the truth fill every room she walked into. Months passed. Harper vanished from headlines. The board reshuffled. Lauren moved out of state, starting over without a name worth salvaging. I opened a small consultancy, rebuilt on clean ground. Looking back, the night she dismissed me at that party was the moment I stopped existing in her world and started existing in my own. She still searches for the man she lost. I no longer search for anything. I'm already found.